Welcome to the Crawcast. I'm your host, George Krawczak, and this is what happened in Week 16 of the NFL season. And if you like this type of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button like it owes you money. Now let's get started. The first game is the Los Angeles Rams versus the Seattle Seahawks, and the Seahawks won 38-37. So Seahawks won 38-37. The Seahawks leading passer is Sam Darnold, who threw for 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Their leading rusher is Kenneth Walker, who had 100 yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver is Jackson Smith-Njigba, who had 96 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Rams, their leading passer is Matthew Stafford, who threw for 457 yards and 3 touchdowns. Their leading rusher is Kyren Williams, who had 70 rushing yards. And their leading receiver is Puka Nacua, who had 225 yards and 2 touchdowns. So the Rams dominated for almost this entire game, to the point where when I was writing down what happened in this game, I'm like, the Rams have Sam Darnold's number. They just dominate him. Sam Darnold just can't do anything against the Rams. And then all of a sudden, when the Rams had multiple opportunities to close this one away, they didn't. It feels like at the end, neither team wanted to win. There was a crazy 2-point play where Sam Darnold was hit as he was throwing it, and the ball went in the end zone, and they counted it as a fumble that was recovered by Zach Charbonnet for the 2-point conversion. I'm going to be honest, I'm not entirely sure if that was a fumble. It kind of looked like an incomplete pass a bit. But overall, the Rams looked great in this game and probably should have won this game. They somehow blew it. And then Sam Darnold didn't look that great. Sam Darnold, I think, has been a little bit overhyped this season just because the Seahawks keep winning. But overall, right now, the Seahawks are in the 1 seed. They did clinch a playoff berth, and so you got to be happy with that. But I think there is a bit of cause for concern for the Seahawks, where Sam Darnold just needs to stop throwing interceptions. He has been too inconsistent, and he just needs to play better. But overall, the Seahawks, they won. Again, they should have lost, but they won, and so they deserve a lot of credit. And then the Rams. I still think the Rams are the best team. I still think the Rams will get the 1 seed, but they lost, and that's a very unfortunate loss for them. The next game is the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Washington Commanders, and the Eagles won 29-18. So the Eagles won 29-18. The Eagles' leading passer is Jalen Hurts, who threw for 185 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading rusher is Saquon Barkley, who had 132 yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was A.J. Brown, who had 95 receiving yards. For the Commanders, their leading passer is Marcus Mariota, who had 95 passing yards and just 95 passing yards. Their leading rusher is Chris Rodriguez, who had 63 rushing yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was Terry McLaurin, who had 53 receiving yards. Overall in this game, just not much to talk about. The Eagles are a good team. The Commanders are a bad team. It was way too close for way too long. It felt like the Eagles just couldn't get things going at some points. But overall, the Eagles took care of business, won when they should have, and that was the entire game. The Eagles are a good team. The Commanders are a bad team. The Eagles needed to win this, and they did. And they won their division. So good for the Eagles. And that, again, not much to talk about. Marcus Mariota got injured, so now they're on to Josh Johnson, which doesn't matter because if you're the Commanders, you want to lose and hopefully get better draft picks, and we'll see what they can do next year with Jayden Daniels, because even, yes, Jayden Daniels has been injured, but even when Jayden Daniels healthy, Jayden Daniels really did not play that well. So we'll see what the Commanders can do next year, and then the Eagles, they're in the playoffs, and we'll see what happens. The next game is the Green Bay Packers versus the Chicago Bears, and the Bears won 22-16. So the Bears won 22-16. The Bears' leading passer is Caleb Williams, who threw for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading rusher is DeAndre Swift, who had 58 rushing yards. And their leading receiver is DJ Moore, who had 97 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Packers, their leading passer is Malik Willis, who had 121 yards and a touchdown. Their leading rusher is Emmanuel Wilson, who had 82 rushing yards. And their leading receiver is Romeo Doubs, who had 84 receiving yards and a touchdown. So this game was just basically about the injuries and the Packers blowing it. So the Packers had this game in hand, and then the Bears went for an onside kick, and they got it. There was 2 plays. One where the Packers sent an all-out blitz against Caleb Williams, and Keyshawn Nixon just blew the coverage. There was a guy wide open in the end zone, and like I said, it was just an onside kick, went right through Romeo Doubs' hands. But this Packers team, I think they deserve a lot of credit because I wrote it down here. So this is who the Packers were missing in this game due to injury. Their quarterback, running back, wide receiver 2, tight end, center, right guard, right tackle, strong safety, defensive tackle number 1, and their top edge rusher. So that's basically the entire team of the Packers getting injured, and they should have won this game and just barely lost it. Again, another special teams mistakes. It felt like every single game the Packers have lost this year was due to a special teams mistake. But overall, again, I think this is a bit promising because they didn't have their quarterback and they should have won. And this feels like it's a yearly tradition where it's like, okay, the Packers beat the Bears in the first game, and then the second game, Malik Willis comes in and the Bears barely win. But overall, it's just tough because so right at the end, Caleb Williams threw a beautiful pass to DJ Moore. But here's the tough bit about it is Quay Walker was held on the play. And it's not even one of those where like sometimes if you see a right or left tackle and their hands are in the shoulder pads and it's like could be a hold, could not be a hold, it's a little tough. But this one, like, you literally see his jersey, like, stretched out, like, 3 yards because of how far he was being held. And so, overall, just, that was a really bad call. And then Caleb Williams, he has been interesting, where I just want to make sure I'm saying this. I'm not saying this as an insult. I'm saying this as a compliment slash observation where he kind of reminds me a little bit of JJ McCarthy or Caleb Williams. He will make the best throws in the sense where he'll be like under pressure and throw a perfect ball into double coverage right only where the receiver can get it. He'll throw he will make the impossible throws look easy, but then he'll make the easy throws look impossible. Like there'll be a guy right and wide open right in front of him like for 5 yards, and he just overthrows him by 5 yards. So like he definitely you see the mechanics there, and it's like he definitely has the potential. It's just you gotta make the easy throws. Don't make the hard throws look easy and make the easy throws look hard. That's kind of what he's doing, and it's good that he's making the hard throws, but so overall, it looks like the Bears will probably win the division. The Packers will probably still make the playoffs because with the Steelers beating the Lions, all the Bears need to win the division is they need the Packers to lose one of their next two, or they need to win one of the next two, which probably could happen. And then for the Packers to make the playoffs, they just need to win one of their next two, or the Lions to lose one of their next two, which again probably will happen. The big problem is with the Packers is just the injuries are piling up. It kind of reminds me of the Colts where it's like they went all in this year just like the Colts. Their star player Micah Parsons went down and so many other players went down. Like literally if you take a list of probably the top 10 players on the Packers this season, like 8 of them are injured and like 4 of those or no, probably 5 or 6 of those are out for the season. So it's just really, really tough for the Packers. And then another story of this is dropped interceptions, especially by Xavier McKinney. Last week I counted 5 dropped interceptions. This week I counted 3 dropped interceptions. The defense just needs to learn how to hold the ball for the Packers. So with the Packers, I think they'll still make the playoffs, but I think they're likely a wild card exit, and I just don't think they're a Super Bowl team with all these injuries. And then the Bears, they're overperforming. I don't think they're a Super Bowl team just yet, but they will make the playoffs for sure and probably win the division. So it's a lot of progress for both sides. And then Malik Willis also got injured during this game, so the Packers might not even have a quarterback next week because Jordan Love concussion protocol and Malik Willis is dealing with a shoulder injury. So that'll be interesting to see where those go. But overall, you gotta be happy for the Bears and disappointed for the Packers because, again, even with all the injuries, they should have won this one and they somehow found a way to blow it. The next game is the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Dallas Cowboys, and the Chargers won 34-17. So the Chargers won 34-17. The Chargers' leading passer was Justin Herbert, who threw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading rusher is Omarion Hampton, who had 85 rushing yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver is Quentin Johnston, who had 104 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Cowboys, their leading passer was Dak Prescott, who threw for 244 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading rusher is Javonte Williams, who had 34 rushing yards. And their leading receiver is George Pickens, who had 130 yards and a touchdown. So in this game, it was close for most of the game, and then Justin Herbert kind of just torched this Cowboys defense. This Cowboys defense is so bad that it made the Chargers' horrible offensive line look great. Like, there's not much to say about it. It's just that I think Matt Eberflus probably needs to get fired from the Cowboys. This Cowboys defense is just too bad, and it was an interesting matchup because it felt like this Chargers offensive line keeps holding the Chargers back because it's like the worst in the NFL, but this Cowboys defense knows how to make them look good. So nothing else to say to that. Chargers are a playoff team. I don't think they'll win the division. I think that still belongs to the Broncos, but the Cowboys are just terrible. They're terrible. We'll see what they can do next year, but right now it's an absolute disaster. The next game is the Minnesota Vikings versus the New York Giants, and the Vikings won 16-13. So the Vikings won 16-13. The Vikings' leading passer is J.J. McCarthy, who threw for 108 yards and an interception. Their leading rusher is Aaron Jones, who had 85 rushing yards, and their leading receiver is Justin Jefferson, who had 85 receiving yards. For the Giants, their leading passer is Jackson Dart, who had 33 yards and an interception. Their leading rusher is Tyrone Tracy, who had 71 rushing yards. And their leading receiver was Wan'Dale Robinson, who had 19 receiving yards. So this game was just kind of awful by both teams. This was really the first disastrous game we've seen for Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart just looked horrible. I get it. Vikings have one of the best defenses in the NFL, but still, Jackson Dart just looked really, really bad. And then J.J. McCarthy looked good. I don't want to say he looked good. He looked decent until he got injured. And then that was kind of the game. Not much happened. Neither of these are playoff teams. J.J. McCarthy will miss next week, so it'll be Max Brosmer, which when Brosmer stepped in, he looked fine. Didn't throw 4 interceptions, so better than his first career start. But, yeah, just not what you want to see out of Jackson Dart if you're the Giants. But, honestly, you got to be happy because you lost, because right now the Giants are fighting for the number 1 overall pick, so they want to lose as many games as possible, but you just hope to see your rookie quarterback play better, especially against a good defense. And so not much to say other than that about this game. The next game is the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Miami Dolphins, and the Bengals won 45-21. So the Bengals won 45-21. The Bengals' leading passer was Joe Burrow, who threw for 309 yards and 4 touchdowns. Their leading rusher is Chase Brown, who rushed for 66 yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver is Jamar Chase, who had 109 receiving yards. For the Dolphins, their leading passer was Quinn Ewers, who had 260 yards and 2 interceptions. Their leading rusher was Devon Achane, who had 81 rushing yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was Jalen Waddle, who had 72 receiving yards. So this game, the Bengals just dominated. Their offense was too much for the Dolphins' terrible defense to handle. And then Quinn Ewers played fine. Like, the Dolphins are just kind of testing out, see if he can potentially be the franchise guy, and the answer is probably not. The main reason why they're benching Tua is not necessarily because he's been playing bad, which, yes, he has been, but it's because if he gets injured in these final 2 games, which, keep in mind, don't matter because they're out of the playoffs, then they can't cut him and they can't trade him. He needs to stay on the team. Whereas if they bench him, they just make sure he's healthy, and then they can evaluate their options in the offseason. If they want to bring him back, if they want to cut him, if there's a team that wants to trade for him. And then giving Quinn Ewers a shot is like saying, hey, 7th round pick, rookie contract, was a projected 1st round pick a year ago. Can he show something? So far, no. And it's against a terrible Bengals defense, so that's a bit worrying. So overall, not much happened. Neither of these teams on the playoffs. At least the Bengals offense is looking back, because Joe Burrow has been very inconsistent when he's been starting the season. Granted, he's been injured most of the season, but again, he deserves credit for playing well, but it's against a terrible Bengals defense, so I'm not sure how much credit he deserves, but this kind of was the outcome everyone expected. The next game is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Carolina Panthers, and the Panthers won 23-20. So the Panthers won 23-20. The Panthers' leading passer is Bryce Young, who threw for 191 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading rusher is Rico Dowdle, who had 29 rushing yards, and their leading receiver was Ted McMillan, who had 73 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Buccaneers, their leading passer is Baker Mayfield, who threw for 145 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Their leading rusher is Bucky Irving, who had 71 rushing yards, and their leading receiver is Emeka Egbuka, who had 40 receiving yards. So in this game, man, it just feels like whoever wins this division is very much limping into the playoffs. It's quite shocking the Buccaneers collapse. So the Buccaneers started so hot. They started 5-1, if I remember correctly. And it's like, oh, they are dealing with so many injuries, and Baker Mayfield's playing at MVP level. So now once they start getting these players back, it's going to be even better. But no, Baker's just fallen off, falling apart, and has been playing worse and worse every single week, and really has not looked very good. And that's quite disappointing for the whole team, and really disappointing for the Buccaneers. And then Bryce Young, yes, he's been playing better, but that's kind of for Bryce Young standards. In terms of average NFL quarterback standards, he's playing okay. Not great, not terrible. And overall, you just expect him to play better. I think whoever wins this division, it'll probably be the Buccaneers will limp into the playoffs and probably be out the first round. That'd be my guess. But overall, like I said, no one wants to win this division. It's terrible, and good for the Panthers, good for Bryce Young for rejuvenating his career and maybe being a playoff team. But neither of these teams are Super Bowl teams, and I don't think they'll make it very far. The next game is the New York Jets versus the New Orleans Saints, and the Saints won 29-6. So the Saints won 29-6. The Saints' leading passer is Tyler Shough, who threw for 308 yards and 1 touchdown. Their leading rusher is Taysom Hill, who had 42 rushing yards. And their leading receiver is Chris Olave, who had 148 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. For the Jets, their leading passer is Brady Cook, who threw for 188 yards and an interception. Their leading rusher is Breece Hall, who had 54 rushing yards, and their leading receiver was Isaiah Davis, who had 52 receiving yards. So, in this game, the Saints just dominated the entire game. Tyler Shough's looking pretty good, so, the Saints, they're not getting the first overall pick, so they're likely not going to be able to draft a quarterback in this draft. So, I think Tyler Shough has played well enough where he's earned at least a chance at the starting job next year and to be the future of the franchise. And if he just sucks next year, then that you'll hopefully get a high draft pick and be able to draft your quarterback of the future next year. And then the Jets, they're just a disaster. They set a record for a first team to go 15 straight games without an interception, and they might go 17 games without an interception. And that's insane to me because, sometimes you just have quarterbacks either throwing dumb passes or a receiver dropping a pass and it just lands in the arms of a defensive player. That's never happened to the Jets. That's just insane to me. And so, yeah, Tyler Shough and the Saints looked really good. Chris Olave looked great. But it's the Jets. Their defense is terrible. Their whole team is terrible. So, the Jets are just a complete dumpster fire and a disaster. So, you get credit for winning and looking good, but you look good against a terrible team. So, not much to say about this game. The next game is the Buffalo Bills versus the Cleveland Browns, and the Bills won 23-20. So the Bills won 23-20. The Bills' leading passer is Josh Allen, who threw for 130 yards. Their leading rusher is James Cook, who had 117 yards and 2 touchdowns. And their leading receiver is Khalil Shakir, who had 34 receiving yards. For the Browns, their leading passer was Shedeur Sanders, who had 157 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Their leading rusher was Shedeur Sanders, who had 49 rushing yards. And their leading receiver was Travion Williams, who had 38 receiving yards. So in this game, neither team looked that great. James Cook really carried this team because, Josh Allen didn't play that good. Shedeur Sanders didn't play that great. It felt like James Cook played really, really well for the Bills' offense, and then the Browns' defense, whenever they were able to shut down James Cook, they played just well enough to keep them in it. But it really felt like this game wasn't close, even though the score is close. The Browns kind of started coming back at the end, but overall, the Bills are just too dominant. And the Bills got a playoff spot, so they'll be in. And then the Browns. Shedeur Sanders isn't playing that great. He's not playing that terrible, but he's not playing that great. And we'll see if, for example, Shedeur Sanders is playing for his job right now in terms of he needs to play well enough so the Browns don't get the #1 overall pick. It seems like it's unlikely that he'll do it, and the Browns will probably be at least in contention for the #1 overall pick, although it'll be tough. And yeah, the Bills, Josh Allen just needs to play better. He's played really good all season, just didn't play that well here. But again, the Browns defense is pretty decent. So overall, the Bills are a playoff team and the Browns aren't. And this game kind of was closer than it really should have been. The next game is the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Tennessee Titans, and the Titans won 26-9. So the Titans won 26-9. The Titans' leading passer was Cam Ward, who threw for 228 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their leading rusher was Tony Pollard, who had 102 rushing yards. And their leading receiver was Alec Aminor, who had 58 receiving yards. For the Chiefs, their leading passer was Chris Oladokun, who threw for 111 yards. Their leading rusher was Isaiah Pacheco, who had 34 rushing yards. And their leading receiver is Isaiah Worthy, who had 41 receiving yards. So this Cam Ward looked really good. This is probably Cam Ward's best game of the season. I get it. A lot of Chiefs defensive players were not playing, but a lot of Chiefs defensive starters were playing, and they're obviously trying their best to play well and win the game. Gardner Minshew did go out in the first quarter. Initially, it was reported that he tore his ACL, but I guess he did not. Although it looks like Chris Oladokun is going to play for the Chiefs for the rest of the season, so we'll see if he can do anything. But overall, Cam Ward, you gotta give him credit. He's at least improving. He's playing better, and it's a really bad Titans team. So he's trying to, work with what he's got, and maybe there's a proof of concept there, and saying, hey, look, he can play well, and he can be the franchise guy. And so you gotta give Cam Ward a lot of credit. And then the Chiefs, like, the good thing about them is that they're having a disaster year, yes, but they'll hopefully have a high draft pick, be able to revitalize this team, revitalize the run game that was non-existent this year, and maybe they can use the high draft picks to do that. But overall, the Titans, you gotta be really happy, because here's the thing about the Titans: even though yes, you want the number one overall pick to try to trade away because you have your franchise guy, you gotta be happy that at least Cam Ward is playing better, and that's all you need is show improvement. The next game is the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Denver Broncos, and the Jaguars won 34-20. So the Jaguars won 34-20. The Jaguars' leading passer is Trevor Lawrence, who threw for 279 yards and 3 touchdowns. Their leading rusher is Travis Etienne, who had 50 rushing yards, and their leading receiver is Parker Washington, who had 145 yards and a touchdown. For the Broncos, their leading passer was Bo Nix, who threw for 352 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Their leading rusher was R.J. Harvey, who had 50 rushing yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver was Courtland Sutton, who had 86 receiving yards and a touchdown. So Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars are looking really, really good. I always struggled with Trevor Lawrence because I'm not a huge believer in him, in the sense that he has not lived up to the first overall pick hype. He has not really played that well this year overall, and he has not played well in his career overall. But the past several weeks, he's looked fantastic. He's looked really, really good. He might be in the best quarterback in football last 4 to 5 weeks. He's played really, really good. And if he can continue playing at this high level, this Jaguars team might be dangerous. And Parker Washington's played great. Jakobi Meyers, that trade for Jakobi Meyers might have been the best trade of the midseason because of how well he's playing. And then the Broncos. Bo Nix, again, kind of didn't play that well, but didn't play that bad. It was the defense got took apart by Trevor Lawrence, and so this will be interesting because this could potentially be the AFC Championship game. Both these teams are playing fantastic football right now, and these are two of the top teams in the AFC, and it could be very interesting. I don't trust either quarterback just yet because the Broncos seem to rely on their defense too much, and then the Jaguars, some of their ones have felt like a little bit fluky and a little bit lucky, but right now these are two of the hottest teams in the NFL, and will be interesting to see how they play in the playoffs. The next game is the Atlanta Falcons versus the Arizona Cardinals, and the Falcons won 26-19. So the Falcons won 26-19. The Falcons' leading passer is Kirk Cousins, who threw for 197 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher is Tyler Algier, who rushed for 79 yards. And their leading receiver is Bijan Robinson, who had 92 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Cardinals, their leading passer is Jacoby Brissett, who threw for 203 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Their leading rusher is Michael Carter, who had 65 rushing yards. And their leading receiver was Elijah Higgins, who had 91 receiving yards. Not much to say about this game. Kirk Cousins is definitely playing really well. Well, okay, maybe not really well, but definitely playing better, and has proved that he can be a low-end starter in the NFL and a high-end backup. And then other than that, Kyle Pitts is starting to play well. The past several weeks he's played great, and none of these teams are playoff teams, but the Falcons are looking a little bit better. Nothing much to say, just it's tough with the QB situation because I would not give up on Michael Penix just yet, but Kirk Cousins has been playing better. And then the Cardinals, they're just a complete disaster. Obviously, Jacoby Brissett's not it, and we'll see how they do with the draft and what they do with Kyler Murray. The next game is the Las Vegas Raiders versus the Houston Texans, and the Texans won 23-21. So the Texans won 23-21. The Texans' leading passer is C.J. Stroud, who threw for 187 yards and 1 touchdown. Their leading rusher was Jawar Jordan, who rushed for 53 yards, and their leading receiver is Nico Collins, who had 59 receiving yards. For the Raiders, their leading passer is Geno Smith, who threw for 201 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher is Ashton Jeanty, who had 128 rushing yards and a touchdown, and their leading receiver is Ashton Jeanty, who had 60 receiving yards and a touchdown. So in this game, it was basically the Texans' defense versus Ashton Jeanty. The Texans' offense really didn't do much. C.J. Stroud didn't play that well. He needs to play a little bit better for the Texans' defense to carry him, where like I say, it can't just be all on the Texans' defense. C.J. Stroud just needs to play better. I get it. They remind me a lot of the 2015 Broncos where like Peyton Manning was the worst quarterback in football and the defense carried him to a Super Bowl. So maybe CJ Stroud just plays average. The defense can carry him to a Super Bowl, but I would like him to play better. And then the Raiders. Geno Smith threw a horrible pick six at the beginning and then started to come back and play well. And then Ashton Jeanty, this felt like his kind of coming out party where he is a good running back and we've seen flashes of that. But this Raiders offensive line is such a disaster that like it's hard to see that a lot of the time. So the Raiders fighting for the first overall pick. We'll see. Geno Smith might not be it, but also they need, like, I don't even know if they use the first overall pick on a quarterback because the Raiders are such a disaster. They need a new everything, new offensive line, new defense, new everything. So I'd maybe trade the first overall pick for a bunch of other draft picks and players to try to rebuild this Raiders organization because one quarterback is not going to change it. And overall, the Raiders are just a disaster. And then the Texans, like I said, if CJ Stroud just plays a little bit better, this team will be a Super Bowl contender. I don't think that they will be because CJ Stroud hasn't shown that, but this defense is elite and can play very, very well. The next game is the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Detroit Lions, and the Steelers won 29-24. So the Steelers won 29-24. The Steelers' leading passer was Aaron Rodgers, who threw for 266 yards and 1 touchdown. Their leading rusher was Jaylen Warren, who had 143 yards and 2 touchdowns. And their leading receiver is Kenneth Gainwell, who had 78 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Lions, the leading passer was Jared Goff, who threw for 364 yards and 3 touchdowns. Their leading rusher is David Montgomery, who had 14 rushing yards. And their leading receiver is Jameson Williams, who had 70 receiving yards. So in this game, the Steelers' offense played really well, and their defense largely played really well too. It's just that the Lions' defense is so bad that is the number one reason why they're getting kept out of the playoffs. Because I don't think they'll make it. They need the Packers to lose the next 2, and they need to win the next 2, and I just don't see that happening. And so Lions are basically out of the playoffs, and their defense is just so bad. And the big news of this game is DK Metcalf got suspended for the remainder of the season for fighting a fan or punching a fan. So this is the story. What happened is, the fan was down in the stands area by kind of the field. Like he was still up in the stands, but he went down to the area, like kind of the closest part to the field of the stands, and then he was yelling something at DK Metcalf. Metcalf walked over to him, punched him, and then walked away. So here's the two different sides of the story. Is the fan just said he yelled DK's name and DK punched him. DK says that the fan called him the N-word and called his mom a C-U-N-T, and then he punched him. We don't really know the side of the story, what is true or not, because here's the deal. A video was released of the altercation of someone sitting by the fan, but here's the problem. He does yell DK's full name, and then DK comes over to him, and then you can't hear what was said after that. And so it's a little bit tough. And then this fan is apparently holding a press conference on Friday to explain the situation and probably sue the Steelers, the Lions, DK, and everyone for a lot of money, which I don't like because I don't like rewarding bad behavior. This is how I feel about it. Both of these people were both in the wrong. This fan should not have yelled at DK. I don't know if he said any of the inappropriate language or not. That was just alleged by DK, but he should not have been going down out of his seat to the edge of the stands yelling at DK, and then DK shouldn't have gone by him and should have ignored him. There was a couple of reports out that said that this fan was reported to security last year because apparently he was harassing Seahawks players in the Seahawks versus Lions game last year. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what's being reported. So if this guy already had a previous incident with him, he shouldn't have been allowed back in the stadium. And again, like I said, this just seems like a warning bad behavior. And what's up with Lions fans? Because I don't know if you remember last year, there was a fan that was invited down onto the field against Packers versus Lions. He was invited down to the field for the national anthem to wave the flag, and he tried to fight Matt LaFleur. And so and then the NFL said that this fan didn't violate the NFL rules of conduct or the Detroit Lions rules of conduct. And I'm going to go through those one by one and tell you if I think he violated them or not. So these are the Detroit Lions rules of conduct, okay? So it says, please restrict movement in seating, please restrict movement in the area seating for in-game action. He did not do that. He walked down to where his seat was not. Sit only in your ticketed seats and show tickets at Ford Field representative upon request. Standing or sitting in the seated bowl area, passageways, aisles, or stairways is prohibited. He broke that rule because he was standing in an area where he shouldn't be standing. Uh, Never take matters into your own hands. Contact the nearest Ford Field representative if there is any issue. That doesn't apply. And then this is what they say. Displaying inconsiderate or otherwise inappropriate behavior towards others. I would say if you're going down yelling and screaming at DK Metcalf, that's showing inconsiderate and inappropriate behavior. Showing behavior that is unruly, disruptive, or illegal. It's not illegal, but I would say his behavior was disruptive and unruly. Using foul and abusive language. I don't know if he did that or not. He might not have, or he might not have. Intoxication or other signs of alcohol or substance imperative. I don't know if he was drunk, because this guy could have just acted like that, and that's just who he is. Violating the no smoking policy, that doesn't apply. Access areas without proper ticket or credentials, don't know if that applies. Wearing obscene clothing doesn't apply. Damage or destruction of building property doesn't apply. Failure to follow the instructions of Ford Field representatives doesn't apply. Failure to provide a ticket upon a request doesn't apply. Verbal or physical harassment of opposing team's fans. I assume that counts as a player too. And yeah, I'd say he was verbally harassing him. So he has violated at least several of these policies. So I don't know. And then also suspending DK for 2 games. I think that is fair to suspend him for 2 games because you can't hit fans. But people point out this other situation, which I also agree, where what happened is DeAndre Hopkins scored a touchdown, and DeAndre Hopkins jumped into the stands, and a fan pushed DeAndre Hopkins. And in response to that, Lamar Jackson pushed the fan. Lamar Jackson should have been suspended for pushing the fan, and I said that at the time. If you look at my, I believe, week 3 results and reactions video. But nothing happened to Lamar Jackson. So, I think if nothing happens to Lamar Jackson for pushing a fan, then DK probably should have only had a 1-game suspension. But overall, I don't know. I think both these guys, DK and the fan, were both completely in the wrong. The fan needs to be banned from the stadium for this behavior because it's just being a jerk. I get cheering for your team, and I'm a passionate Packers fan, okay? I love cheering for the Packers, but I think it's a jerk move and you're yelling, screaming, demeaning other players or other fans because, obviously you want your team to win, but even if your team doesn't win, that you don't ruin other people's experiences or be a jerk to anyone just because you want to and just because they cheer for a different football team. I think that's just stupid. I think both these guys are in the wrong, and I hate that DK Metcalf is punished for being in the wrong, which he does deserve to be punished for being in the wrong, but one fan is probably going to make $1 gazillion off of this and be rewarded for being in the wrong, and I think that's just kind of ridiculous. The next game is the New England Patriots versus the Baltimore Ravens, and the Patriots won 28-24. So the Patriots won 28-24. The Patriots' leading passer is Drake May, who threw for 380 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher was Ramondre Stevenson, who had 51 rushing yards and a touchdown, and their leading receiver is Stefon Diggs, who had 138 receiving yards. For the Ravens, their leading passer was Lamar Jackson, who threw for 101 yards. Their leading rusher was Derrick Henry, who had 128 yards and 2 touchdowns. And their leading receiver was Zay Flowers, who had 84 receiving yards. So the big news of this game is Lamar Jackson did get injured, and he might miss next week for the Packers. So in this game, the Patriots actually looked pretty good. Drake May looked really good. There was one weird thing where it was 4th and 10. They tried a fake punt, which I think is just a terrible idea when it's 4th and long. And because what happened is the guy took the snap and he was trying to throw it, but his read was completely covered. So then he tried to run for the 4th and 10 and just got stuffed immediately. And then the Ravens, it was weird. So they're up by 11 in the 4th quarter with Tyler Huntley. And then they just took Derrick Henry off the field. Derrick Henry was having such a monster game. I don't know why you take him off the field. I get it taking him off the field for passing situations because Derrick Henry does have horrible hands and is not a good pass catcher, but he was still an elite runner. They were up by a lot, and so it could have helped them drain the clock and at least threaten the run. That made no sense to me, but the Patriots are able to come back, and this is probably the end of the Ravens season because the Steelers just need to win one more, so for the Ravens to make the playoffs, they need the Steelers to lose the next 2, and they need to win the next 2, and that's going to be tough for them. So I think the Ravens are basically out of the playoffs. Lamar Jackson might be done for the season, and overall, the Patriots got a good, deserving win, and then the Ravens just somehow blew it, and they shouldn't have blown it, but they did. The final game of the week is the San Francisco 49ers versus the Indianapolis Colts, and the 49ers won 48-27. So the 49ers won 48-27. The 49ers leading passer was Brock Purdy, who threw for 295 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Their leading rusher is Christian McCaffrey, who had 117 rushing yards, and their leading receiver is George Kittle, who had 115 receiving yards and a touchdown. For the Colts, their leading passer is Philip Rivers, who threw for 277 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their leading rusher is Jonathan Taylor, who had 46 rushing yards and a touchdown. And their leading receiver is Alec Pierce, who had 86 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. So this was a really good back and forth game until towards the end. So Philip Rivers looked really good, and actually good for him because last week he really didn't do anything. Like, it was a close game against the Seahawks, but Philip Rivers really wasn't he didn't do anything good. He didn't do anything that bad either, but he didn't play well. But this week, he actually looked really, really good. It was a nice back and forth game, and then eventually, Brock Purdy and the San Francisco offense just overwhelmed the Colts defense. Philip Rivers threw a bad pick six, and then there was nothing they could do to come back. So that is interesting. So 49ers look like a dominant team, and it's going to be interesting because I thought once once Nick Bosa went down and Fred Warner went down, the season was over. Their defense is done, and then they suffered all those injuries of George Kittle and missing time, and Brock Purdy missing time, and Trent Williams missing time, and Brandon Ayuk still missing time and kind of going crazy. But overall, just the 49ers are back and they look dominant. And then Philip Rivers, I'm wondering what's going to go on with him because he actually looked really good in this game. So after the season, is he going to retire? The Colts do need a quarterback because Daniel Jones might miss the beginning of next season. So does Philip Rivers try to come back and play quarterback next year? Or does he wait and do what he did this year's? Wait for a team that needs a quarterback at the end of the season and try to join them? Because I don't know if you remember, but it was about 3 years ago in the NFC Championship game. It was the 49ers versus the Eagles. And in the game, Brock Purdy got injured, and their backup, Josh Johnson, got injured, so they didn't have a quarterback on the team. And Kyle Shanahan said after the game they were going to talk to Philip Rivers and see if he wanted to be their quarterback for the Super Bowl if they made it, but they didn't because they had no quarterback in that game. So I'm wondering what Philip Rivers will do, but 49ers got a dominant win, and they needed it. So that's what happened in Week 16 of the NFL season. If you like this type of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button like it owes you money, and I'll see you on the next one.